So, React Native Performance Measurement, that's the title of the speech. And when I just got into the development, I was mainly focused on the web, and I was fascinated about how we can measure performance there, what we can do, how great tools we have. And this topic was so interesting for me that I was even planning to maybe do it as some specialization in the future. But then I got into the mobile development, and I really love it. I don't want to go back to web, but I was all the time like, okay, and how can we measure performance here? It was always, yeah, we have that small feature in our React Dev menu, and it was not perfect. It didn't give me a lot of information, didn't really give me even a clue where I should look for performance problems in my applications. But thanks a lot. In last year, this topic is becoming more and more hotter, and there are a lot new tools to measure performance, to debug it, a lot more talks about it. Maybe you heard from the last conferences. And what I want to present you today is just my journey of how I was learning to debug performance in React Native application. And maybe this way you will be able to start it easier and faster and don't do my mistakes. And I think we should measure performance a lot more often than we do. So, where I started, of course, in the official documentation, and I don't know about you, but I'm the person more kind of do and try things and then read carefully and don't make mistakes. So I started from the performance tab in the React Native docs, and it turned out that it is for old engine, and if you are using Hermes, it won't work. So I started to learn how to do it in Hermes, and in Hermes it's a lot harder. Unfortunately, Hermes makes our app a lot faster, but it works differently than previous engine, and we can't no more use those tools that we were using previously. So what do we need to do? We need to, of course, disable dev mode, and it's the first rule that you need to do always when you are trying to measure performance of any application, because our dev tools are adding some more complexity and our code is doing more stuff in the dev mode, and we don't want it because it won't be doing it in the production mode. So, next thing, we need to record a sampling profiler, and we can do it here in the our React Native menu, enable sample profiling. Basically, we need to tap it, do some stuff, and tap it once again. Theoretically, it should change to disable sampling profiler, but it doesn't always do that, so don't worry, just tap twice, and if you see the bottom information with a path where your sampling profiler was saved, then you're good to go. Next, we need to pull and transform it, and thanks to God we have a nice command that will do it for us. And then we will have transform file. We can take that file and use it, load it in simple Chrome DevTools. So simply open your Google Chrome, open DevTools, and there in Performance panel you will be able to load it and see some graph. One important thing here, it doesn't always work. In my case, in one application it was working. In my test application where I'm using React Native 0.69, it wasn't. I don't know why, but it was always showing me only that the file that I'm trying to convert is empty, and due to React Native docs, it's probably because I'm using wrong version of Hermes, or it should work only for the newest Hermes, but just be ready that it won't work always. So after such hard work, if you succeeded, you will see this. And when I saw it first time, it was like, okay, it's similar to what we have in web, but it's like, what? Where do I even start? There are no names of the functions that I know. It's basically all library code, and I don't have any cues on how long it takes, what took too long, what should, maybe some of these things should take so long, maybe no. And in web, if you remember, we have some time measurements, we have also some red triangles indicating that this thing shouldn't take so long, so maybe start from it. And took a look at it and decided to skip it because it's not a good tool for beginning. Sometimes you will need to use it because, for example, the tools that I will show you later will not help you with performance problems in idle state. If you have such problems, and you can have because your app can do basically something that is not even visible, so this tool can be helpful. So, next one. We have a nice new plugin to Flipper, RunPerf Monitor, and it basically will give you such a nice graph where you have some general number of how good your performance is. Don't take it too seriously because it's just something for you to at least know that you've improved your performance, but it's not like some strict measurements that you can promise your client to, we will have 100 performance here. It's not like Lighthouse. We have always also average frames and some graphs showing us how our frames were working. You can argue that it's basically the same that we have in React Native built-in, that small square at the top of your application that you can enable. But for me, this thing gives a lot more information as only from the graph and how it changed, I can have some clues what was my application doing wrong. And if, for example, it's repetitive, maybe I should start from some repetitive tasks that I was doing, and maybe there's a problem. So for me, it's a lot better to see such graph. So important things here, use real device. Never test performance on simulators because it's not true. Turn off dev mode, as I've mentioned, and you can do it also in the settings. You will see settings, if you will see them, because they don't look always too nice, and especially in Android with dark mode, don't be scared, you will not see any text, but basically you need to uncheck this first check mark and you will be good to go. So, after this, we've tested our application, we know that it's bad, but how we can fix it? We have next nice tool in our Flipper, and it's built in. You don't need to install it additionally, because previous plugin you need to install, and you need to also install it in your app, so it takes some time. But this one is now it's just our React DevTools. We probably know it if you are debugging on the web. You probably know because it's the same as we have in React. And here the graph is a lot more readable because we can see which components were rendered, which were not. We can see the names of our components. Yeah, there are a lot of additional ones because because React Native and libraries add a lot of additional stuff, but still it's a lot more helpful. And we'll see it in a second. Important things here, do not turn dev mode off because we are not measuring, we are debugging, and we need our tools to basically say our components' names, and most important, it will not work. You will always receive an error that it can't connect to your device, and if you have this error, make sure to check if you enabled dev mode. Record Y component rendered, and you can do it in DevTools. Here we have settings, and here we have this nice guy, and we can check it. And it will give us a lot of information that will help us. So, maybe some practice. Let me get to the application. So we have our simple test application. It's not doing anything fancy. It's just showing the list of cards with images and some info about them. And we can scroll here. And if we can scroll, we can see that our performance is not like great. It's stuck sometimes. So we should definitely do something about it. Let's start with measuring. And let's check if we have, yes, we need to disable it. Yeah, you saw how pretty this menu was, and that's useful. And let's measure. And by the way, I'm using a quite old device. It's 2016, I think. So we can see how our real users can have performance impact, and as you can see, it's 32 here. Why it's important to use old devices? Because yes, not all of your users are using newest iPhones, newest Androids, and a lot of them will use the old devices, but they deserve good performance. So we can see that our performance is really bad. Unfortunately, here it's probably also worse because of the presenting, but in normal, in typical way, I was seeing also ups and downs. You can see it here also. The up was very slow here, then a bit faster, then slow, and a lot of slower. So it was basically when I was scrolling and getting to the end of the list, JSRAD was dead, was even not allowing me to scroll further, and at the end of the list we are trying to fetch new images. So that's the causes of our problems, and let's try to see maybe how we can fix it. So we need our dev mode. Let's reload to have it clear. And our React DevTools. You need to also be patient with this plugin because it's not always fast. It sometimes takes time to connect, sometimes takes time to react on your tapping on the button. So be patient, don't tap too much. And let's try to record it. Okay, that would be enough. Oh. Don't tap too much, what I was talking about here. And once again, so it's processing, yeah. And we have some information. The cool thing about this tool is that we see here chunks of what React Native was doing. It's basically each time it was reconciling our tree, we have a chunk of this work here. If it's green, it's kind of okayish, but you still should probably look into it. If it's yellow, it's really bad. So what we see here is our tree, and the gray things are not re-rendered. They were only reconciled, but not re-rendered. And all of our list, as we can see here, oh, I didn't show you how the code looks. Just give me a sec, sorry for this. So our code is simply one component for image lists that is using FlashList, and next simple component for image card. It's not doing any heavy work. It's just spreading the props here and rendering some UI, and that's it. So let's get to our performance. What we can see here is that our whole list were rendered, and it's kind of okay because we fetch new data from the API each time. Our image list is updated each time we get to the end of the list. Yes, we can work on some ways to improve that and avoid that, but for now we won't go too deep into that, and we will focus on the other thing. And that's interesting thing is that we can see our image card here, and we can see that it was re-rendered. It wasn't rendered for the first time, and we can even guess that it wasn't rendered for the first time because we had some components when we started to measure. So why it re-rendered? And let's get to the code. If you read carefully React Native docs, you will know that you shouldn't put arrow functions in render item. I'm not sure if you see it quite well. Maybe I will try to make it bigger. So arrow functions are wrong move here. We should move them to a separate function and use it here. And the next thing that they recommend with FlashList is to basically have simple component, and we kind of do because it's not doing any heavy work, it's just displaying some UI, and yeah, we are displaying two images, but it's a real life example, and we kind of often have in our application similar cards, so we can't go smaller. It's also about business idea, not about only performance. But what we are not doing here is not memoizing this component. And if we don't want to render it, we need to memorize it. So let's do it, but let me skip it just to the next commit to not waste time. So we have our image card memoized, and in our image list we have separate function that is even memoized in the use callback. And let's see if it helped us. Doesn't look like it helped. So, processing data, and nope, it didn't. And it didn't help because memorization is not about only putting word memo and don't thinking how you memorize it. It needs to be done with a head. And what we are doing wrong here, we are passing the object, the whole object as a prop. So each type, it's an object. We are destructuring it here. And as you know, probably in JavaScript, objects are not equal to each other. So memorization here makes it even worse than we wanted, because each time we are trying to compare things that will never be equal. So we even made it worse, not helpful. So we need to try, if we are having lists with components, we need to try to pass to them simple values as props, which can be compared between each other. And in our case, I know that it's maybe not always possible, but in our case, it's really possible because all of these values are just strings or numbers. So let's do just that, and let's skip to the next commit. It's complaining, but it's not that important, just changed. So we have our props properly passed. Here we are spreading them, and let's see how did it, oh sorry, how did it change here? Okay, probably it's enough. Let's, it's in progress. Ah, yeah, that's exactly about this DevTools. It's not always perfect. Even better. Okay, so profiling in progress. So we have something. Nope, it doesn't work. Yeah, with Flipper, unfortunately, sometimes the best way is just to close it and reopen. Let's reload. It will reload automatically, I think. Okay, so almost there. Yeah, let's try to measure. I think it's enough. Okay, so we have it, and we can see right away that our chunks are a lot lower here. We have only some problems here, but here we are not re-rendering. Our image components are already gray and we are not re-rendering them. Here we still have problems because we are basically rendering components for the first time. As you can see, it's why this is rendered. This is the first time the component rendered. And yes, rendering, fetching images, rendering them, it's heavy and we can't sometimes overcome this. But if you are one of those persons that are sitting right now in the audience and thinking, in what cave does this girl live? Didn't she hear that we have a FlashList and we shouldn't supposed to use FlashList anymore? Yeah, we have a nice tool from Shopify, which is FlashList, and it improves performance a lot. It also does some part of memorization for us, so not all of that what we've done would be needed with FlashList. But I showed it on purpose to, first of all, show how we can be mistaken with the memorization. And also, with FlashList, you're not able to do a section list as far as I know. It's possible, but it's hard. So sometimes you will still need to use React Native lists, and maybe this thing will help you. So let's do just that, and let's use FlashList. I've already installed that package previously, so I will not need to reload. Okay, and we can see here that we have our FlashList. The cool thing about it is that you just need basically to install the package, and almost all of the props will be the same. You don't need to change them because the API is exactly the same as in FlashList. So that's cool. And also when you will just add it and run it in the development mode, you will see useful warnings that will tell you how can you even improve more. And one of the warnings you will definitely see is that you need to set estimated item size prop, and it will even measure your components and give you exact numbers that you need to put in here. And in my case, it was this number. Maybe it will be something different for you because it depends on the size of your component. There can be some additional warnings, just follow them and maybe also read carefully docs from FlashList to give even better performance. And let's get back to our measurements. Let's this time just not focus on components, but focus on our performance. So we need our dev mode off. Let's reload. Sometimes also you will see errors here. I'm not having them now, unfortunately, but errors telling that it can find some item with some number. This error comes from React DevTools. Don't try to debug it. It's not your code, it's just DevTools. If you want to get rid of it, restart Flipper. But basically, if you measure if you're just in React DevTools and trying to see components graph, flame graph, it won't harm you, so you can do it even with that error. Just don't try to run performance monitor with that error because it will be doing something even in the idle state because it will be sending those warnings. So let's start measuring. We can see right away that it's a lot better, maybe not perfect, but at least a lot better. But from the user perspective side, we are still hitting that end of the list, so it's not perfect. We have 82, which is kind of nice. Our JS thread is not that, and in previous cases, I'm not sure if you noticed, but it was probably that around 12, 13% of the time, at least previously I was receiving those results, and now it's not that. Yes, our average frames are on 39, so it's not perfect, and also our user performance is not, user experience is not perfect as we hitting that bottom. And that's also because of the next prop that we have here, on end threshold. As I mentioned before, we are refetching, fetching additional images when we are reaching the end of the list. And as for me, this prop is like really cryptic. I don't know what value I should put here. If you read the description, it doesn't give me a lot of content. So basically my recommendation is just try it. Try different values. It should be some values like 0.5 here. It was like refetching it quite late in my case. 2 was just something that I got good for my application, but it can depend on your API, how quick it is responding. If you are using some public API, it will be probably slower. How many items are you rendering at once? How many items are you fetching at once? So different factors, try to experiment. And in my case, it was kind of nice. Let's start measure, maybe just reload to have fresh start. Okay, and let's start. So we can see that we are hitting sometimes that end of the list, but also I'm scrolling kind of crazy, so normal user won't scroll like that. Our measurements are not way better, but our user experience is definitely better because we are not hitting that end of the list. And if I will scroll as a normal user, I would even feel that it's like worse. So I think we improved it at least a bit. I won't go into any other details because it's a very wide topic and there can be thousands of performance problems that we can have. I will just mention some of them that I've had or maybe read about them. Interesting one is reading long JSON files. It was unexpected for me that such thing can cause a problem, but on older devices it can cause a problem. So if you have, for example, a long translations file in JSON format, consider it splitting into smaller chunks. It will work better. Tab navigation. If you have tab navigation on the start, it works like it's rendering all of the tabs at once. So if you have 3 tabs with heavy list in them, it will be like a long start of the app. So consider adding lazy prop. It will render only the first tab, so next ones will be rendered when the user enters them. Yeah, it's maybe worse. You should also consider it with your business to what's better for them, to wait longer on the start or to have the tabs right away available. Remove console logs. Yes, they take time in production, and it's not like you shouldn't have them in your code. You can leave them, but there is a Babel plugin for that will remove them altogether in the bundle. Don't use JS animations, and I think probably everybody knows it, that we should use native driver. Do not animate size, and it's the same as on web. We shouldn't supposed to animate sizes. We should transform items, but not animate with or hate. Don't keep state higher than you need it, because if you will keep state higher, it will render all the tree. And if only one of the components down there needed, it's maybe not worth it, so consider lowering the state down to the component that really needs it. Don't pass tile as a simple object. It's bad because it's not clean code, but also it's bad because what we discussed previously, it's a prop, and if you will compare 2 objects to each other, it won't be never equal. So basically what stylesheet is doing for us is object.freeze under the hood, so use it please. And prevent background animations, because you can leave your loader not visible but doing stuff. So check it if you're not doing that. Some recommendations. Of course, as I mentioned, use slower or older device. You can also maybe check your statistics, what devices of your users are using, and take some middle one and try it on it if you have such possibility. Do average measurements, because measure it in the way that I showed you is nice for beginning, but maybe it's not perfect for harder cases, because each time I scroll differently. I'm a human, I can't do it all the time the same. And with this will help us next nice tool. It is CLI, Android Performance Profiler. And we can basically integrate it in our detox or app unit tests and do measurements, for example, 10 in a row, and have some average result for them. And also this tool is so cool that it will show you, it will give you the files that you can open in the Chrome and see the exact things that I was showing previously with performance. And if you will do it twice, you will have comparison points, so it's from their official docs. They're measuring FlashList and FlatList, and we can really see how they're performing in the same conditions, just changing the library. So that's it, thanks. If you have any questions, I would be happy to hear them.